Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome to 90 Day Fiancé latest news updates. Debbie Johnson has long been one of the most talked about and emotionally charged personalities in the 90 Day Fiancé franchise. From the very first moment she appeared on screen, she made it clear that she was not someone who blended quietly into the background. Debbie was bold, outspoken, protective, and fiercely loyal to the people she loved. She laughed loudly, argued passionately, and never once tried to hide her emotions for the sake of appearances. Whether viewers admired her strength or criticized her behavior, one thing was always undeniable. Debbie Johnson lived with her whole heart. That is exactly why the recent news surrounding her life has left fans shocked, saddened, and deeply concerned. In a devastating turn of events, the 90 Day Fiancé star has suffered a heartbreaking loss, one that has shaken her to the core and changed her life in ways no reality television storyline ever could. For years, audiences watched Debbie navigate complicated family dynamics, intense emotional conflicts, and deeply personal struggles on national television. Her relationship with her son, her involvement in his romantic decisions, and her constant presence in emotionally charged situations often placed her at the center of controversy. Yet behind all the drama, behind the sharp words and heated moments, there was a woman driven by love, fear of loss, and an overwhelming desire to hold on to the people who mattered most to her. That context makes this tragedy even more painful to comprehend, because Debbie is now facing the very thing she always feared, the most: losing someone she loved deeply. The news of Debbie Johnson's loss did not come with flashing headlines or dramatic announcements. Instead, it arrived quietly, almost unnoticed at first, through subtle changes that only longtime fans recognized. Debbie, who had once been highly active online, sharing her thoughts, opinions, and daily life without hesitation, suddenly went silent. Days passed, then weeks without her usual presence. No fiery posts, no emotional reactions, no commentary. That silence was unusual and for many fans deeply unsettling. It felt as though something heavy had entered her life, something that words could not easily explain. Eventually, the truth emerged. Debbie Johnson was grieving the loss of a loved one, someone whose absence left a profound emptiness in her heart. Sources close to her described the loss as devastating, saying it struck her unexpectedly and left her emotionally shattered. This was not a distant acquaintance or a minor loss. This was someone whose presence had been woven into the fabric of her everyday life. Someone who offered comfort, connection, and emotional grounding. Losing them felt like losing a part of herself. What makes this loss particularly heartbreaking is the way it contrasts with the image many viewers had of Debbie. On television, she was often portrayed as strong-willed, controlling, and unafraid of confrontation. But grief has a way of stripping away those outer layers, revealing the vulnerable human being beneath. In private, Debbie was not the loud, argumentative figure audiences were used to seeing. She was a woman overwhelmed by sorrow, struggling to process the reality that someone she loved was gone forever. Those closest to Debbie say the days following the loss were incredibly difficult. She withdrew from public life, choosing solitude over attention. There were moments of disbelief, moments when the reality of the loss felt impossible to accept. Grief does not follow a straight path, and for Debbie it came in waves, some gentle, others completely overwhelming. One moment she would find herself lost in memories, replaying shared conversations and moments of laughter, and the next she would be confronted with the crushing silence left behind. Unlike the conflicts and emotional breakdowns shown on reality television, this pain could not be edited, resolved, or turned into a storyline. There was no reunion episode to bring closure, no dramatic confrontation to release the tension. This was real life, unfolding quietly and painfully behind closed doors. And for someone who had spent so much of her life in front of cameras, facing grief away from the spotlight was both a necessity and a challenge. As word of Debbie's loss began to spread, the response from fans was immediate and emotional. Messages of sympathy flooded social media, many coming from people who had once criticized her harshly. In moments like these, opinions fade, and humanity takes center stage. Fans who had argued about her behavior on the show now spoke with compassion, offering condolences, prayers, and words of support. It became clear that regardless of how people felt about Debbie as a reality TV personality, no one wanted to see her endure such pain. Fellow cast members from the 90 Day Fiancé franchise also reached out privately, expressing their sorrow and support. While reality television often creates rivalries and divisions, grief has a way of dissolving those boundaries. In this moment, Debbie was not a controversial character or a source of drama. She was simply a grieving woman, trying to survive one of the most painful experiences a person can face. For Debbie Johnson, this loss represents more than just heartbreak. It marks a turning point in her life, a moment where the noise of public opinion fades and the reality of love and loss becomes impossible to ignore. Everything she once argued about, defended, or fought for now feels distant compared to the weight of grief she carries. This tragedy has forced her to slow down, to reflect, and to confront emotions that cannot be shouted away or rationalized. Those who know Debbie well say that she loved deeply and without reservation, which is both her greatest strength and her greatest vulnerability. When you love that fiercely, loss cuts deeper. The pain lingers longer, and the healing takes time. Debbie is now learning how to exist in a world that no longer includes someone who meant everything to her, and that adjustment is not easy. As part one of this story comes to a close, one thing is painfully clear. Debbie Johnson is facing one of the darkest chapters of her life. The woman known for her strong voice and powerful presence is now navigating silence, sorrow, and emotional exhaustion. This is not a story about reality television drama. This is a story about grief, love, and the fragile nature of life itself. And this is only the beginning of Debbie Johnson's journey through loss, healing, and transformation. The pain Debbie Johnson is experiencing goes far beyond what the public sees on the surface. While fans know her as a reality television figure, the reality of grief has nothing to do with cameras, editing, or audience reactions. Grief is quiet, relentless, and deeply personal. For Debbie, the loss of a loved one has created an emotional void that cannot be filled by fame, attention, or even time itself. Those close to her describe this period as one of the most difficult moments of her life, a time marked by confusion, emotional exhaustion, and overwhelming sadness that arrives without warning. In the days following the loss, Debbie struggled to maintain any sense of normalcy. Simple routines became painful reminders of what was missing. Everyday moments that once felt ordinary now carried emotional weight, triggering memories she was not prepared to face. Grief has a way of turning the smallest details into powerful emotional triggers, and Debbie found herself constantly confronted by reminders of the person she had lost. A familiar sound, a shared habit, or a quiet moment alone could suddenly bring waves of sorrow that left her emotionally drained. What made this experience even more challenging was Debbie's public identity. Living in the spotlight means there is little room to disappear completely, even when personal pain demands solitude. While Debbie tried to step away from social media and public engagement, curiosity and speculation continued to grow. Fans wanted updates, answers, and reassurance. But Debbie simply did not have the emotional strength to explain her pain to the world. Instead, she chose silence, not as a statement, but as a form of self-protection. Sources close to Debbie say she spent much of this time reflecting on her life, her relationships, and the emotional choices she had made over the years. Loss has a way of forcing people to look inward, and Debbie was no exception. She began questioning past conflicts, moments of anger, and times when fear of loss may have shaped her behavior. For someone who had often been portrayed as controlling or overprotective, this period of grief brought a painful realization. Love and fear are often deeply connected. The loved one Debbie lost had been a constant presence in her life, someone she relied on emotionally more than many people realized. Their absence created not just sadness, but a sense of disorientation. Debbie was forced to navigate a new reality without the emotional support she had once taken for granted. That adjustment was slow and painful, filled with moments of denial followed by crushing acceptance. During this time, Debbie leaned heavily on a small circle of trusted individuals. While the public saw little from her, behind closed doors she allowed herself to be vulnerable. She cried, she reminisced, and she openly expressed the fear that she might never feel whole again. Grief does not arrive with instructions, and Debbie had to learn how to survive each day, without knowing what the next would bring emotionally. Messages of support continued to pour in from fans, many of whom shared their own experiences with loss. These messages, while painful to read, also reminded Debbie that grief is a shared human experience. People from all walks of life reached out, telling her she was not alone in her pain. In those moments, the distance between celebrity and fan disappeared, replaced by a shared understanding of love and loss. Fellow cast members from the 90-Day Fiancé franchise expressed their sympathy privately, respecting Debbie's need for space while still making it clear that she had support. Some had faced similar losses themselves and understood the importance of allowing grief to unfold naturally. There was no pressure to return to the spotlight, no expectation to perform strength for the sake of appearances. Debbie was given what she needed most: time. As the weeks passed, Debbie began to experience the complex emotional layers that come with grief. There were moments of calm, followed by sudden emotional breakdowns. There were days when she felt numb, unable to cry, or even fully comprehend her emotions. And then there were moments when the pain felt unbearable, as if the weight of loss had settled permanently in her chest. This emotional unpredictability was exhausting, yet completely natural. Grief also changed the way Debbie viewed her past experiences on reality television. Conflicts that once felt significant now seemed small and insignificant. Arguments, criticisms, and public judgment faded in importance when compared to the reality of losing someone she loved. The drama that once defined her public image no longer mattered. What mattered was healing, survival, and honoring the memory of the person she had lost. This period of mourning revealed a different side of Debbie Johnson, one rarely seen by the public. She became more introspective, less reactive, and more aware of her emotional limitations. The woman once known for speaking without hesitation now chose her words carefully. Understanding that silence could sometimes be more powerful than confrontation. Part 2 of Debbie Johnson's story is not about recovery or resolution. It is about endurance. It is about learning how to exist in a world forever changed by loss. Grief does not offer closure. It offers transformation, and Debbie is slowly being transformed by this experience. Whether she is ready for it or not, as she continues this painful journey, one truth remains constant. Debbie Johnson is no longer the same person she was before this loss. Something inside her has shifted, reshaped by sorrow and reflection. And while the pain is still fresh, this chapter is laying the foundation for whatever comes next in her life. As Debbie Johnson slowly begins to move forward, one painful truth follows her every step. Life does not return to what it once was after a significant loss. There is no reset button, no moment where grief suddenly disappears. Instead, grief becomes something you carry with you, shaping how you think, how you feel, and how you see the world. For Debbie, this realization has been both frightening and clarifying. The loss she endured has permanently altered her emotional landscape, forcing her to confront vulnerability in ways she never had before. In the weeks and months following the tragedy, Debbie began to understand that healing does not mean erasing pain. It means learning how to live alongside it. Some days felt manageable, almost normal, while others felt unbearably heavy. There were moments when she caught herself reaching for the phone, wanting to share something with the person she lost, only to remember they were no longer there. Those moments were the hardest, quiet reminders that the world had changed in a way that could not be undone. Those closest to Debbie noticed subtle but significant changes in her behavior. She became more patient, less reactive, and far more reflective than before. The sharp edges that once defined her personality had softened, replaced by a deeper emotional awareness. Loss had humbled her, stripping away the need to always be right or in control. Instead, she began focusing on emotional honesty and inner peace, something she had rarely allowed herself in the past. Debbie also began reevaluating her relationships. Grief has a way of clarifying which connections truly matter, and she found herself distancing from negativity and emotional chaos. She no longer had the energy for unnecessary conflict or public judgment. Protecting her mental and emotional well-being became a priority, even if it meant stepping away from familiar spaces and routines. The question of whether Debbie will return fully to the public eye remains uncertain. Reality television demands emotional exposure, confrontation, and vulnerability for entertainment, and Debbie is no longer sure she can nor wants to afford that version of herself. This loss has reminded her that some parts of life are sacred and deserve privacy. While she understands the platform that fame has given her, she is now more cautious about how much of her pain she allows the world to see. Fans continue to watch from a distance, many expressing admiration for the quiet strength Debbie has shown during this period. Where there was once criticism, there is now understanding. Her story has resonated with countless people who have experienced similar losses, turning her from a polarizing TV figure into a symbol of shared human grief. In this way, Debbie's pain has unintentionally created connection, reminding others that even those who appear strong and outspoken can be deeply fragile inside. Through reflection, Debbie has also begun to find ways to honor the memory of the loved one she lost. Rather than focusing solely on the pain of their absence, she is slowly learning to hold on to gratitude for the time they shared. This process is not easy, and it is far from complete, but it represents a crucial step forward. Remembering with love instead of only sorrow is a form of healing, even if it comes with tears. There are still moments when grief overwhelms her without warning. Healing is not linear, and setbacks are inevitable. Debbie has accepted that there will be days when strength feels impossible, and that is okay. Allowing herself to feel without judgment has become part of her journey. For the first time in a long while, she is not performing resilience, she is learning it. As Debbie Johnson continues to move through this chapter of her life, one thing is clear: she is no longer defined solely by her past television persona. She is defined by her capacity to love, to lose, and to endure. This heartbreaking loss has reshaped her priorities, softened her outlook, and deepened her understanding of what truly matters. This is not the end of Debbie Johnson's story. It is a transformation, a painful one, but also a powerful one. Even with a broken heart, she continues forward, carrying memories, love, and quiet strength into whatever the future holds. Her journey stands as a reminder that grief is not a weakness, but a testament to love, and love, even in loss, remains one of the strongest forces we carry.